Is it true that 2 out of 3 of the best-selling books on Kindle are romance books?
That seems to be what reports are indicating. So the bottom line has reported that they had an interview with Alex Newton from Kalytics to go into the numbers of how romance is breaking down. And they went through a lot of things. Publishing trends have typically a 5 to 10 year life cycle. They went through Google searches to see what was being searched for, like billionaire romance, which rose with 50 Shades of Grey. That's actually starting to trend down. Mafia romance went up. Hockey romance. We're going through several different cycles on how romance is. Now, in the top 100 bestsellers on Kindle, 61% of titles are romance. Okay, and that includes romantasy. The major component of it is romance.
And it also includes women's fiction, which I think is about 6 or 7% of that 66%. So
Right.
it's 6 out of 10 is true romance, because women's fiction is kind of on the edge of romance.
But what you're also seeing here, and this is a comment that someone made, is that if you go to the epic fantasy bestseller list, you don't find a classic epic fantasy on it. You're gonna find a romantasy. You're going to find something with romance as one of the major key points of it, as opposed to when before it was good versus evil, man versus monster, kingdom versus kingdom kind of stuff. Now you're more locked into it's going to be about a guy and a girl, or it's going to be about romance.
A lot of romantasy, from what I understand, is basically a Conan the Barbarian story, but from the damsel's perspective. It's like Conan the Barbarian has become the male character in the female-focused fiction, but it's very much that man with the dark past who's not good. Right? He's honorable, but he's not good. He's powerful, but he's not kind. Obviously, different romantasies have different kinds of men, but that kind of Conan the Barbarian character seems to be what romantasy readers are drawn to, which is, when you look at it from that perspective, very much a classic sword and sorcery element of this story. So you have sword and sorcery, which is a little bit different than epic fantasy. You have grim dark versus noble dark, which actually we're going to get to those 4 quadrants here in a second, because it connects. In fact, we should probably, you keep going on the romantasy. I'm going to connect it with the 4 cycles.
So the question being asked is, where's the diversity in the books, at least in the top end of the market? And Alex seems to think, it's not really. You don't look at the top end of the market, okay? There are people who are making a very good living in the mid-range of the market, and they're writing lit RPG, they're writing game lit. It's not necessarily romance focused, so you don't have to shift over to writing romance in order to make some decent money on Kindle right now. There's still a place for you to be there and actually sell some books. One thing I would say about this romance going higher is, I used to work at atmospherics when I was in the Marine Corps, seeing what else was going on at the same time so we could more accurately predict what the enemy was going to do. And females have been complaining a lot lately. And I'm hearing this question a lot. Where are the men? And this has been a trend that's been going on probably for the past 2 years on social media, is women are complaining that they can't find men anymore, men willing to commit, men willing to
singles events
where take a risk. Right, there's singles events where there's no men. And an interesting part of The Accountant 2, which is one of the top movies on Amazon Prime right now, is it starts with him going to a singles event. And there's a lot of, very excited women there to go and find their partner, their match or whatever. And what we're seeing is a dearth of true romance in real life. And when there is a famine in one area, they go and look for it in fiction. I say they. It's anyone who's experiencing this kind of thing. I mean, if you're working a corporate desk job, you want to read Conan the Barbarian. You don't want to read more about your desk job. So when you're missing something, you go looking for it in your fiction. And right now, it really looks like women in particular are missing romance. I mean, what was the big news that came out this past week? Grok releases an AI companion that it's so... I don't want to say cringe because I hate that word. but you can talk to your AI girlfriend about anything, and it is it's pretty rough. But the point is that there is a hole. There's been damage done to the regular way men relate to women and women relate to men, and them forming the connections that create families and create the satisfaction people get out of life. So now they're turning to it in fiction.
So look at Jack Reacher is a good example of this. Jack Reacher is a very active character in the story. As a protagonist, he protags. He's not afraid to punch the bad guy. And yet, romantically, he's incredibly passive. And this is a big shift from how stories were 40 years ago, where the men were far more active romantically. And I think it's a shift away from what readers are wanting, because you'll notice the Jack Reacher stories are not particularly popular with women. Like the Amazon Prime show seems to be very much a show by and for men. I don't. You may disagree with me. Those of you here on the live chat, and we'll keep throwing your comments up on screen because we do want to hear from you. And but of the people that I've talked to who've seen Jack Reacher, they're all dudes, and women seem to be looking for that more active protagonist.
That's so funny. I have the exact opposite experience. It's all the women talking about Jack Reacher because they're posting pictures of him shirtless, and they're like, "I'm watching this for the plot."
So I may be undermining my argument here with this particular example, because I do know that a lot of women really like that actor, and they don't care really what he's doing.
They don't care what he's doing.
Yeah, so just put Fabio on the cover. So there was to connect this romanticy, somebody shared, I saw Larry Correia retweet this, and I commented on Larry's on X. It connected the four turnings with the kind of four flavors of fantasy. So you have grim dark, noble bright, and grim bright. So if you can kind of imagine. So where we were in the third and fourth turnings was peak grimdark. So you're looking at the First Law, Warhammer 40K, Malazan, the Book of the Fallen, which I'm not familiar with, and then the Chronicles of Thomas, Covenant of the Unbeliever. So that's peak grimdark. And then you have peak noble dark, which is Lord of the Rings, the Once and Future King, the Kingkiller Chronicles, Saga of the Forgotten Warrior, and the Stormlight Archive. So this is on our kind of turning from the fourth turning to the first turning, where it's still a dark story, but there's a nobility to it. So there's no nobility to Warhammer 40K. I mean, there kind
I disagree.
of is.
Don't get me started.
Yeah, let's go to the Wizard's First Law. There's not a lot of nobility there, and it's very subversive, right? You find out that the hero that you've been following is actually the son of the Dark Lord, and so we're right now we're in the fourth turning, kind of pivoting towards the first turning. The first turning, though, also includes peak noble bright, so we're now moved full spectrum away from grimdark.
Yeah,
noble bright is Chronicles of Narnia, Chronicles of Pryden, Phantom Tollbooth, A Wrinkle in Time, and The Last Unicorn. And then there's also Grim Bright, which is Xanth, Dragon Riders of Pern, Neverending Story, The Princess Bride, and Watership Down. So what I love about this is that it matches perfectly with our four turning episode where we talked about Zeitgeist, the episode that started all of the Zeitgeist conversation. In fact, if you looked at this post on X, there's a lot of people referencing Alexander Macresis and my episode about this. And we connected kind of fiction in general to the four turnings, but we hadn't made the connection between grimdark, noble bright, and grim bright. And I feel like this is a helpful heuristic. And so if you're writing a grimdark story, you have to realize that you're skating to where the puck is and used to be.
Right.
Whereas if you're writing a noble dark story, or even if you're writing a noble dark story, you're skating to where the puck really is. And if you're writing a noble bright story, you're skating to where the puck is going to be. So if you're at the very beginning of your career, you need to be thinking nobility first for your story.
Well, I mean, that assumes this is going to stay on the same trend because these things do reverse sometimes, depending.
Well, it comes all the way around. The wheel.
No,
the wheel of time turns ever onward. Jonathan
reverses
Sugar.
direction. The clock will reverse direction and turn back because this is not everyone's experience. If you look at the Soviet Union, they stayed grim dark for a really long time, and they couldn't ever get to noble dark and into noble bright. Okay.
If you've ever been to Russia, you realize that there is only grimdark.
Exactly. Yeah. So sometimes it gets stuck. But as to what he is saying here, what the best and what they call charismatic speakers do is they read the room, right? They understand how the people around them are flowing in terms of emotion and response. If you can do that with your audience and keep your finger on the pulse of what they're reacting to, you know where the puck is going to be. All right, what do people want right now? Okay, that's why Noble Dark is doing well. Why? Dark, that's the setting. That's the time that we live in right now. It's dark, but what we want is nobility. We want heroes. We want people that will stand up to the darkness, okay? And this is where you can see this in the society when people start formulating around champions, because that's what people are really looking for.